Hi, boys and girls. Okay, so we are now on chapter 10, and today you have a guest reader. But before I introduce the guest reader, this guest reader has been bugging me to read a chapter to you for a while. So before we do that, I want to say hello to all my friends out there. Hello, friends. How are you? You all are looking so very good. I'm so happy to see old Gavin out there. And oh my gosh, who else do I see? James. Hi, James. It's good to see you out there too. So today's skill is perspective taking, which basically is you're going to look at the story from a different character and how they would see something. So today in chapter 10, Dr. Cranium makes a appearance again. So if you remember Dr. Cranium from the earlier chapters, he was the doctor that John's mother took him to when John wouldn't eat anything but chocolate, and he wouldn't eat his vegetables or any of his other good food, meats and things like that. So he saw Dr. Cranium. Now his parents are really worried about him because he's gonna tell them about this chocolate disease he has, and they're gonna have a hard time believing him. So they take him to Dr. Cranium. And so what this is asking you to do is imagine you were Dr. Cranium in this chapter. Would you believe John's stories? Why or why not? So yes, I would believe John's stories, period. No, I would not believe John's stories if I was Dr. Cranium. So that would be one sentence. Then you should have like 2 or 3 reasons of why you would believe him or why you wouldn't. So that's like 2 or 3 more sentences about why you would believe John or why you wouldn't believe John. So this should be about anywhere between 3 to 4 sentences. Okay? So you're becoming Dr. Cranium. Before I introduce, who do I see out there? I see James. Hello, James. And I see Mackenzie. Hi. And oh, Gavin. Hi, Gavin. How are you? So my guest reader has been bugging me. Please let me read to them. Please let me read to them. So my guest reader is my son Luke. Hi. So he's going to start with Falling Up. That is at the back of your poetry books.
It's one of my favorites.
And then he is going to read chapter 10 to you on page 101. So I'm just going to step up and let Luke take over. I'll be back.
Hey everybody. I don't know if you can see me, but there's a cat in the window. Over there. So I'm going to read you guys Falling Up. Falling up. I tripped on my shoelace and I fell up to the rooftops and over the town, up past the treetops, up over the mountains, up where all the colors bend into the sounds. But it got me so dizzy when I looked around, I got sick in my stomach and I threw down.
Instead of threw up, you threw down.
And so we're going to read Chocolate Touch with Chubby Me. Chapter 10. For sale. I know. Alright. Dragging along and thinking of all the dreadful things that had happened, John had walked about halfway home when he heard the cheery voice of his father. "Hello, hello!" called Mr. Madness, crossing over from the other side of the street. He was on his way home from the station. "You left the party rather early, didn't you?" "What?" Mr. Madness had just seen the patches and streaks of chocolate that were drying on John's face and over his clothes. "Good gracious," he said. "No wonder you left the party early. How did that happen?" John burst into tears. It has been so awful, but now he could tell his father about his terrible day. He stopped crying and only sniffled a little now. And then as he told the whole story, about taking the coin at the candy store, about buying the box that had turned out to have only 1 chocolate in it, and about the toothpaste, and about breakfast, the gloves, the silver dollar, the pencil, the lunch, the trumpet, and finally, the ample dunking water. "You mean to tell me that they really all turned into chocolate?" Mr. Magnus asked. Mr. Midas asked. "You're sure you didn't imagine some of this?" "Oh, no." "Oh, no," John assured him. "Well," Mr. Midas said, still looking doubtful, "we're only a couple of blocks from that candy store of yours. Not that I've ever noticed one there. Suppose we stroll over and ask the man whether his chocolate always do strange things to people. It's on the next corner, John said, recognizing some of the houses on the side street. Not the next house, he said, but John's voice faded into silence. The corner where he had found the candy store was nothing now but an empty lot. Flat, open ground littered with a pile of rusty tin cans and broken bottles around a splintery old sign saying, "For sale." Said Mr. Midas, frowning anxiously at John. "I think we better pay a visit to Dr. Cranium before we go home." That's where the store was, thought John. That's where the store was, thought John, protested, beginning to cry again. He had shed more tears in that one day, it seemed, and certainly eaten more chocolate than in any of the other days of his life put together. I know it was. I know it was. Dr. Cranium was a busy man. As luck would have it, however, he was able to see Mr. Midas and John almost at once. Well, said Dr. Cranium. "And how are we getting along now, John? Have we cut down on our candy, eh?" "How do you do?" John responded dully. Apparently, he had a bad day, Dr. Cranium. Mr. Midas said, "Trouble at school, you know, and a little accident at a birthday party. What I'm worried about is that he keeps saying that everything he puts into his mouth turns to chocolate." "No more than a nursery fantasy, I am sure, Dr. Cranium." "Nothing more than a nursery fantasy, I'm sure," Dr. Cranium said to Mr. Midas. "Well, John?" Well, John," he went on, looking down with a smile, "suppose you can tell me in your own words what the matter seems to be." "Everything I put into my mouth turns to chocolate," John explained. "Everything I eat and everything I drink changes into chocolate. I'm thirsty, and I'm getting a pain, and a bad one, I think." Dr. Cranium sighed and patiently invited John to open his mouth and say, "Ah, ah," John said. Dr. Cranium peered into John's mouth briefly and gave a low whistle of surprise. "This chocolate eating simply must stop." He went to a supply cabinet. "I don't think there's any time to be lost," he told Mr. Midas. "I'm going to give boy some of my own special compound, Dr. Cranium's elixir, I call it. Never fails." Dr. Cranium selected a large bottle from one of the cabinet's crowded shelves. He removed the top from the bottle and the spoon from the other shelf. He filled the spoon with an oily, greenish-yellowish medicine that had yellowish-reddish lights ginning in it. "It doesn't taste very pleasant," Dr. Cranium warned John in a pleasant tone of voice. "But I'm sure it'll do the trick. Clear the stomach and you clear the mind. That's what I always say." Dr. Cranium offered John a brimful spoon. "Must I?" John asked his father. "I know it'll turn to chocolate." "Go on," Mr. Midas said, nodding encouragingly. "Drink it down." And then pitcher. John took the spoon between his lips. The medicine turned to chocolate. The spoon turned to chocolate. John choked and sputtered, and chocolate syrup sputtered from his mouth. Dr. Cranium dropped the spoon in alarm. When it struck the white, tilted floor, the chocolate handle snapped into several pieces. "Mercy!" said Dr. Cranium. "I've never seen anything like it. The boy's whole system seems to be so chocolate-filled that it chocolifies everything it touches." After he had recovered somewhat, the doctor went on. "I believe that this must be an unprecedented case of chocolatitis. I shall call it Cranium's disease. I shall want to make an exhaustive study of the child. I think John has had enough excitement for one day," Mr. Midas said. and that's chapter 11. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a rest of your night, or whatever. And hope you have a great rest of your time. Bye!